is Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. I'm Nancy Solomon. A federal investigation into pandemic deaths at two New Jersey veterans' homes has found troubling conditions that violate the residents' constitutional rights. We'll ask the governor about it, and we'll also talk about whether he's changed his position on welcoming immigrants to New Jersey. And we'll take your calls. Should the federal government set up refugee camps in New Jersey? And if so, where? What else would you like to ask the governor? The number to call is 844 745 8255. That's 844 745 TALK. We'll also be taking questions via social media using the hashtag AskGovMurphy. The number again, 844 745 TALK. And we're joined now by Governor Phil Murphy. Good evening.
Good evening, Nancy. Thank you for having me as always.
So on our last show, we talked about the death of your Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver. Tonight, we have happier news. You've appointed New Jersey Secretary of State Tahisha Way to be your Lieutenant Governor. So let's start there. Tell us about her.
Yeah, I thought you wrote a really good piece about Tahisha and the whole process. She is, in many respects, a younger, next generation Sheila. Sheila's, to say she's got big shoes to fill would be the understatement of the year. But I use the phrase that Sheila was a five-tool athlete, which is a baseball term, and Tahisha's in that same category. High school in the Bronx, Brown University undergrad, UVA lawyer, practiced as a lawyer, then called freeholder director in Passaic County, administrative law judge, among other many professional endeavors. A great personal story.
Taught literature.
Correct. I believe an English major at Brown. Mm-hmm. And has been in our cabinet since basically day one, as you rightfully point out, as Secretary of State. So one of the great things about if you go with someone like Tahisha, among other things, we know each other cold. I mean, she's overseen our elections, both during a pandemic and under the assault on democracy. She's overseen our census count. And look at other states. New York lost a House seat. Thanks to Tahisha's leadership, we held our seats, which is a huge deal for federal funding for programs across the board. She's overseen tourism. She's had a hand in our business development. And as is the rule of the road, as you know, in New Jersey, you can't just be the lieutenant governor. You've got to have another job. Sheila brilliantly ran the Department of Community Affairs. That's a decision we have to make in terms of its permanent leadership. Kim Holmes has done a great job in an acting capacity. But Tahisha, I say that because Tahisha will continue as Secretary of State. And she's already off to a great start. So we could not be more fortunate in the context of an overwhelming tragedy and the loss of Sheila.
She even has had a stint as acting governor. Was it earlier this week, I think?
Yesterday.
Maybe Monday? Yesterday.
Okay.
Gee, time's not going by very fast.
Yeah.
I saw a photo of her on the site formerly known as Twitter. And she was signing a bill. She just looked so happy.
Yeah, she is.
It was kind of nice to see, but so she's stepped right in.
She's already stepped in. I had a National Governors Association day conference, a day trip, but I was out of the state. She's just as they say, she's the whole package. She's got 4 wonderful daughters. She's married to Charles, get out of the way, who was a fullback for the University of Virginia and then the New York Football Giants. We should talk football because I was at MetLife both Sunday night and Monday night, and those are stories we could spend the whole evening on. But
I think a lot has been said.
A lot has been said, exactly. But in any event, I could not be happier, and she's jumped right in. She's a pro, complete pro.
Okay, so let's jump right into the report that came out the end of last week from federal prosecutors on their investigation on the high number of COVID deaths at 2 veterans' homes in New Jersey. It was pretty damning, right?
It was.
Even by the kind of the standards set in the early days of the pandemic when little was understood, the veteran homes really failed to keep residents safe. And, the report says that the problems persist today. And I'll just try to boil it down to a few things. This was a long report. There was a lot of detail, but employees were told not to mask, even if they wanted to bring in their own masks. Families of residents were not told about the infection rate, so they had no opportunity to get their loved ones out of there. There was a lack of infection control that the report says continues today. Inadequate care and lack of monitoring for the changes in somebody's condition, poor management, and problems that also continue today. The full-time medical director was cut in 2018, and that became a consulting role. There was, and so there were a few more on my list, but I don't want to go too long. So, what do you have to say about this?
Well, first of all, I've used some pretty harsh words, and I guess I'll use the word. I've used the word appalling. Deeply disturbing would be another couple of words that would come to mind. And we take this. We by the way cooperated from day one. You may recall this started under the Trump administration, and this was dropped on us right before the 2020 election. Several states, including New Jersey, had this dropped, and it took us, I have to say, at the time by surprise. But that doesn't mean we didn't cooperate from day one. And obviously, because of the passage of time, the Biden Justice Department has been overwhelmingly the so-called prosecutor of this report. It's unacceptable. There's just no other way to put that. These veterans are our heroes. They not only deserve at least an average healthcare experience, I would argue they deserve the best experience of any of our seniors. And the stuff in that report is unacceptable. So we have cooperated. We will continue to cooperate. I can't say enough good things about our legislature. They have been very strong partners. We've worked with them. They've made many suggestions along the way, and they continue to. And I will just say that all options are on the table unequivocally. I do want to give a little bit of context, if I may. There are 3 veteran homes in New Jersey. One of them was not included in this, and that's in Vineland down south. And that's principally because you had most of the infections, illnesses, losses of life between Menlo Park and Paramus. I think Paramus, I get the sheet every morning. I think Paramus has 94 losses of life to date. Menlo Park, 80 by contrast from COVID. By contrast, Vineland, I think, is at 23 since March, all of this since March of 2020. So we take this deadly seriously. We have and will continue to cooperate. It's deeply disturbing. All options are on the table. But I also don't, and by the way, our veterans are our heroes. They deserve nothing but the best. I don't want folks listening, however, to think that we've been doing nothing. And I want to make sure folks know that we've not been sitting on our hands. And I think to some degree with good effect. The report, in a very brief section toward the end of it, acknowledges that we've made a lot of progress. The report continues right up through the here and now. And that, frankly, if you said to me, what's the most disturbing part, it would be the stuff that's going on now. You could make an argument in March of 2020 that nobody knew nothing about what worked and didn't work as it related to COVID. Now, but when you're talking about lack of proper infection practices, there was somebody who died of an extreme case of diarrhea in that report. The ongoing stuff, frankly, is for me, all of it's unacceptable, but that continues to be. But folks should know that we've made a lot of changes. And CMS, which is the federal overseer of Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicare, has noted this. So one of the 2 veterans homes has been awarded 5 stars. The other has been awarded a 5-star each of the months in 2023 until as we sit here. The DMAVA, which is the state unit that runs oversight, is in the process of converting residents from a double room to single rooms. We've established a patient advocate. Anybody who's a manager has to go through a 26-hour infectious infectious prevention protocol. You may recall in April or May of 2020, we hired an independent firm to shine a light on all of our long-term care, including the veterans' homes. We've put a lot more funding in. None of that is an excuse. I want to make sure everybody understands that unequivocally. This is unacceptable, period. All options are on the table. We look forward to working with the legislature and the feds to get this to a better place. But at the same time, I want folks to know that we've not been sitting on our hands. This is something we've been taking deadly seriously for over 3 years now.
Is there anything that you did or didn't do related to the outbreaks at the veterans' homes that you now regret?
What I did or didn't do, or what we didn't do, I mean, clearly there was, and this included Tony Fauci, if we can look that up, masking. My God, why were we debating masking in March and April of 2020? But everybody was, including experts, not just the folks in these veterans' homes. We were obsessed with surface infection when we should have been much more obsessed with airborne, and like you and I are sitting 3 feet from each other. Judy Persicelli and I pounded away, and remembering these are residences. Folks at the time, I think maybe still a little bit confuse folks in a hospital with this is their home. And you'll recall that we had this big amount of discussion around when you've had COVID and you're readmitted to your residence, you got to segregate. You got to make sure you're in Italy, a different floor, better yet, a different wing, or even better yet, a different building. And by the way, your staff had better be segregated as well. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the report says that those practices were not adhered to early on, and that was in direct violation, if you will, to the firm guidance that we were putting out at the time. So there's a lot, sobering is another word I would use. We have had in those 2 homes, we've had private outsiders come in to help manage those facilities to good effect. But again, listen, you're talking about loss of any single loss of life of a veteran is one loss of life too many, particularly when you could have prevented it.
I mean, obviously, you're not there hands-on running an institution like that, but do you feel that, maybe at the beginning of the pandemic with all that was going on, you weren't paying enough attention to what was going on there?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I would also say at the end of the day, and I want to say this unequivocally, the buck stops with me, period.
So what are the next steps now? Do you negotiate with the federal prosecutors over how to resolve the problems that they highlighted so that they don't sue the state? And,
I'm
what
not,
happens next?
yeah, I'm not worried about when you're talking about a loss of life of a veteran or their health. I'm not worried about whether somebody sues somebody or not. We have been and we continue to be in constant discussion with the feds, with our own legislature, I mentioned the 2 private entities that have come in to help us, obviously, with DMAVA, which is the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. If folks out there aren't familiar with the acronym, we know some of the stuff we've done is working, so we want to do more of that, obviously. I mentioned double beds to singles, patient advocate, more funding, bringing the private folks in to help manage it. Infection protocol preventions for the management folks as part of it. So there's too early to tell exactly what this looks like, but we're not too proud to take anything off the table here. All options are on the table.
All right, let's go to the phones. We have Dave calling from Montclair. Dave, you're on the line with the governor.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, good afternoon. Good evening. So I'm ICU nurse for 10 years. I was a frontline worker. I took care of one of the first COVID patients when COVID first hit in North Jersey. So my question to you is, this discussion is regarding standard of care in terms of my opinion, and was it followed or not? So with that, I'm curious what your position also now is in regards to the ongoing striking that's going on in northern New Jersey with the Barnabas hospitals. I think that a lot of the grievances with the striking nurses is the ratios and patient safety, which kind of ties into what you've been talking about, standard of care, patient ratios in an ICU. 2 means 2, step down, 3 means 3, or 4 means 4, and a medical surgical 4 or 5 means 5. And you highlight the fact that bringing in private industry, private for-profit hospital institutions might be a solution. But my concern, and this kind of goes back to my question, is what is your position with the striking nurses right now? Because in my opinion, maybe some of these striking nurses have grievances with these private industries that are for-profit and aren't following this known documented 2 means 2 in an ICU,
Yeah.
4 means 4 in a step down.
Yeah, Dave, we should. I'm going to answer your question, but I do want somebody to follow up. Alex Altman is with us. Alex, if you can help me with getting somebody to connect, either from Department of Health, Caitlin Bastion, our new commissioner, or somebody on our team. When I said private, I want to make sure I'm very clear about this. I meant help. I think perhaps an existential question that we should address as part of the veterans homes is what line of business are we in the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs? In other words, is that an organization that is a healthcare organization, or is it an organization that is responsible for veterans, but perhaps should farm in professional, non-DMAVA healthcare expertise, which is in essence what we've done in the 2 veterans homes up north. So that's what I meant, Dave, by private. I'm not talking about privatization. I'm talking about, and by the way, I think they're all union. Everybody's a union shop. So in terms of the 2 organizations that came in, I'm not happy you ask about the strike. And by the way, staffing ratios is a big part of this, as I understand it. I'm not happy. We're a proud pro-labor state. There's no group of workers that are more heroic than our frontline healthcare workers. And the fact that this is going on without resolution is, in my opinion, unacceptable. I do understand at long last they're getting back to the table, I believe, tomorrow with a mediator.
I think so.
Does that sound right?
Yep.
And that's something that we have been encouraging. And in the vernacular, get into a room, lock the door, throw the key away, and get a deal. And I've said this as well recently, Dave. I know collective bargaining is hard, and I know, please God, both sides enter that in a spirit of goodwill. But at the end of the day, another baseball phrase, instead of tie goes to the runner, tie goes to the workers. And, we are a proud, as I mentioned, labor state. These are heroes. Let's get this thing resolved, period.
I mean, it's crazy that the strike has gone on for a full month,
Yeah.
and that this is the first time they're going back to the negotiating table. I've been told that the hospital is spending an enormous amount of money bringing in nurses from out of state to break the picket lines and fill those positions. It doesn't make sense to me. Why not just spend some extra money then and
Yeah.
settle?
Listen, I don't have visibility into the explicit levels of the negotiation, other than staffing. I know has been an issue that's been out there, but get this done. Get this done, and get it done now.
Yeah. Okay, we have more calls, but I do believe we're going to have to take a break. We have just a few seconds before we go to break. You're going to go to Asia next month. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll take a break.
We've had very successful economic missions that have created jobs and investment in New Jersey to Germany, Israel, Ireland, India. We're going to go to Japan and South Korea and try to see if we can spread some more of that magic. I'm very optimistic about this trip. It's a big one.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yep.
We will be right back. You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
We're live with Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon. So let's talk about the immigration issue, because this one really kind of caught on fire the last week or so.
At some point tonight, can we talk about a really weighty, complicated matter?
Like the Jets. I know that's what you really want
Bless
to talk
your
about.
heart, yes.
Yeah, this is public radio. You got to bear with me here.
Trust me.
Okay, so here we are in the middle of a crisis with refugees arriving from the southern border. And facing a severe shortage of emergency shelter. New York City has nearly 60,000 asylum seekers occupying beds in traditional city shelters. And I've seen numbers that the influx of refugees into the city is as high as 100,000. Mayor Eric Adams has called for federal help. And now the Biden administration has proposed 11 different federal sites to create emergency shelters. And one of them is at the Atlantic City Airport. And you came out pretty much with a hard no on that idea, and it surprised a lot of people. So why are you opposed to this?
Well, let me say a couple of things as background. First of all, I would put our record as a general matter on immigration, immigrants, welcoming society up against any other state in the past 6 years. That's everything from being, among the first in the nation to have driver's license access for everybody, regardless of their status. It's the way we use our bully pulpit. It's not just in-state tuition, but financial aid for dreamers. It's the way we dealt with the Afghan refugees. No state took more Afghan refugees in than New Jersey. Coordinated very tightly with the federal government, and in particular our military, almost literally virtually without incident. We've opened the door to Ukrainian immigrants. We have one of the largest Ukrainian American populations of any American state. Indeed, we already have spillover out of New York City, anecdotally and otherwise. You can see it. We know it. I could go on and on and on. Secondly, and I will answer your question. Secondly, please God, America, let's figure out in Washington, and governors are willing to help. I had dinner last night with governors from both sides of the aisle. We're recommitted to trying to add our voice to this. Let's figure out our immigration policy once and for all. And in my humble opinion, it's a three-legged stool. One is, whether we like it or not, we have to secure the border. It has to be done responsibly in a 21st century way with compassion, but it must be secured. Number two, there must be a pathway to status for the, 15 or 20 million, I'll bet you that's understated at this point, folks who are already here. And that's got to be part of this. And thirdly, let's have a really smart 21st century, legal, enlightened immigration policy that feeds folks into the jobs of tomorrow, the industries of tomorrow, where we are right now desperate. I think I've said this to you before. I was until recently the chair of the National Governors Association, and the Business Roundtable reached out and said, we want to have a conversation with you. And I got a couple of governors last minute to get on the call, and there were probably 25 CEOs, and the lead spokesperson was Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. So everybody sees this from all sides. Having said all of that, it's a bridge too far. It's a scale too far. The resources required to do what they're suggesting. And by the way, I didn't hear from anybody. I read about this in the paper or on the news wires. We just can't do it. And it's very, very different than the Afghan example. It's very different than all the other bona fides that I mentioned. So not only do I not see it now, I just don't see it. And by the way, if Washington were to solve the immigration reality, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So please, God, let's hope they get it done.
Well, I mean, do you think it's
You
unfair?
weren't going to move on to another
No,
topic
no, we're
with
not
that
moving
answer?
on.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understood that.
Do you think it's unfair that you're being criticized for, for having been pro-immigrant and now saying, no, I'm sorry, we can't put up refugees here. We don't have the resources.
I think the word unfair in the context of an elected official, particularly in New Jersey, is completely unrelated or irrelevant. So I fairness or
Untrue?
not, I let it roll out. If I worried about what people thought of something we said or did, I wouldn't get any sleep. So just that's not of concern to me whatsoever. I don't want people to think because I'm making a pragmatic, fact-based, by the way, with a heavy heart in many respects, but absolute fact-based, pragmatic decision on a particular suggestion doesn't mean that we're not a state that's open, that's living the American dream, that we aren't, that all of a sudden we're against immigrants and immigration, because that's just not true and the facts don't support that.
All right, well, okay, let me put the question a different way. Aren't you opening the door to exactly, like, this is exactly what the Republican governors of Florida and Texas wanted to do. They wanted to call the bluff of Northeastern liberals and say, oh, you're so pro-immigration, you take the refugees. I mean, that's basically what they did, right? And they put people on buses and planes and they sent them north. So, and for all, and for all the reasons why that's wrong, don't you think this is kind of making their point that they've had the brunt of the burden of people coming over the border and needing support and services and housing, and now Northeastern governors have to deal with it?
I'd say a couple of things. One is comprehensive immigration reform is desperately needed in this country. And that's probably, I'm not sure I would agree with Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis on exactly what that looks like. I know what I think it should look like, but everybody needs that. Their behavior is nothing less than shameful in the way they've treated these people like pawns, having said that. So we're not helping them make their point. I promise you that. They're trying to make political points. Yes, is there a substantive reality that the feds need to figure this out? Congress and this administration need to figure this out unequivocally on behalf of all Americans in every state, red or blue or otherwise. But they are shameful and they're using people's lives as pawns. Sorry.
Have you had a conversation with Mayor Adams about this?
I speak with the mayor and the governor all the time on this. Our people have. I've not spoken of late, at least, about this. That's not true. I spoke with Governor Hochul the other night about it as a general matter, and she and I have had conversations of late directly, more frequently and more recently than with Mayor Adams. And by the way, I'm a big fan of both of them. So they're trying to figure out. I'm not sure it's legally doable in our country, but they're trying to figure out how they can get these people work permits to get them into a better lot in life, get them off the street, allow them to make some bucks, pay some taxes, I might add, do right by their family. I support that endeavor completely. I fear it's a federal solution and not at the state level, but we had a conversation literally an hour ago about this. And if there's a way to get to that end on the state level, it's not like we don't have any of these folks in our state already. I hope that whatever New York learns and whatever path they can forge on the work permitting side, that we can either learn from them or work with them and pursue the same sorts of things here.
What was the conversation that you had, though? What was
Just
that
generally,
about?
she's talking about going. She and I saw each other 2 weeks ago, and we saw each other on Monday night. I might have had. I know you don't want to talk about the Jets
At the
game, but about the
Jets.
Jets game, she's a Bills fan, so she was there, and she was just updating me on conversations with the White House, both before she went
Uh-huh.
and then also talked a little bit about this work permitting piece.
Okay, let's go back to the phones. We have Mark from Vernon on the line.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Governor, for taking the call. Oh, sorry. This goes back to the item about the VA home in Paramus and the other VA homes in New Jersey. I call that home the Home of Heroes.
Yep.
Directly across the street from the VA in Paramus is the largest nursing home in the state of New Jersey, Newbridge Bergen Regional, where my sister lives.
Yep.
I had emailed Representative Gadamer's office when I heard news about the deaths at the VA. Newbridge Bergen was stellar through COVID. Absolutely stellar.
Yep.
I never questioned my sister's safety under that management. Why couldn't there be collaboration across the street from each other
Yep.
to save our heroes from dying?
Yep. Listen, first of all, God bless our heroes and God bless your sister. That's exactly what's been done in both Paramus and Menlo Park. I'm drawing a blank as to whether or not it's Newbridge, but they're doing exactly that. Should they have done it sooner? Should they do it in a bigger scale? Those are all questions that need to be answered. As I mentioned, all options are on the table, but that's precisely the type of professional management. I think part of the process here, I mentioned this 10 or 15 minutes ago, Nance, when I said there's an existential question, and I think you always have to ask yourself this. And to some extent in state government, in our state, these are life and death questions. Are you in the line? Is your main line of business providing health care for seniors and residents care? Or is your main responsibility somewhere else and you're doing this because it's part of that something else? I think we have to be cold-blooded about that. A much more mundane example that is not life and death. NJ Transit. Are you in the rail and bus transportation business? Or are you in the real estate development business where they sit on a ton of real estate? Well, the answer is absolutely they're in the bus and rail business. Let's figure out folks who do nothing but real estate development for a living to build the transit-oriented development communities, et cetera, that we need. That's a much more mundane example of that. And that's something that I think has to be, back to the veterans and our heroes, that question has to be part of the way forward here.
Okay, Mark, thanks for your call. And we're going to stay with calls and go to Paula in Teaneck. I think we're getting a lot of calls tonight, Governor, about a pipeline. Paula, are you on the line?
Hey, Paula.
Yes, I am. Hi. Governor Murphy, the New Jersey Superior Court ruled recently that the TGV compressor station in West Milford is illegal and it violates the Highlands Preservation Act. The gas compressor station could pollute the drinking water for 4 million people. Will you call on the DEP to issue a stop work order? And I must say that I'm one of 8 people who got arrested trying to get your attention to get this shut down. The 3 of us were actually convicted. We need you to take responsibility for this and shut down the construction site.
Paula, where and when did you get arrested? Was I there?
We were arrested at out along the road of the construction site.
Okay. I wasn't there, was I?
In April. She weren't there.
Okay.
No.
God bless you. I got to come back to you because I know I'm familiar with the ruling. I'm not sure what the DEP authority is on this, Paula. Obviously, the way the facts you've described are not good. So let me just say that. And obviously, we just got rated we've gotten incredible ratings lately. One of them is top 3 state to work and live in. And the one nick on us was basically we're the most densely populated state in the nation. And we have to deal existentially with I think their issue was more air quality than water quality, as I recall. I'm looking at Alex, but either way, it's in the similar vein. You can't get a so-called gentleman's C if you're in New Jersey and you're dealing with water quality, air quality, etc. So, Paula, if I can ask you to bear with us, Alex, maybe get Sean LaTourette on the phone with Paula, our commissioner, tomorrow would be great, or somebody senior in his team. And thank you for calling in.
Thanks, Paula. And now let's go to Kenneth Burns,
Kenny.
WHYY reporter who's monitoring social media. Kenny, what do you have for us tonight?
Ken, I miss you here. I was expecting to see you in person.
Governor, I have a topsy-turvy schedule this week. By the way, greetings from Central Jersey.
Thank you.
Heather of Ocean County asked, where is the science proving that the offshore wind projects have no negative impact on our marine life? And what is the Gov doing to ensure an authentic, non-biased investigation of the whale deaths takes place?
It wouldn't be 2023 if we didn't have a question about
But
whales and
death.
wind.
Yeah. By the way, let me just give a quick, if I may, point. Do I have a little bit here? Point of personal privilege to shout out a great American and a great New Jersey, Joe Fiordalisa, who died a week ago today. Just one of the all-time greats. He had been at the Board of Public Utilities for 20 years. He had been its president since I named him president since I've been governor. And he single-handedly is responsible more than any of us, including yours truly, for moving us to the clean energy future that we demand. There was a memorial service for him today that was just drop dead impressive, and keep him and his family in your prayers. Well, when folks hear, and Ken, for Heather's sake, and if we can figure out a way to follow up with her, maybe Sean LaTourette is also the right guy, or somebody in our front office. But it's funny if you're, as I am, a Democratic governor, and you get a Democratic administration in Washington, I think the default assumption is that there's going to be, you're going to keep an eye out for each other's back, and that the feds won't call balls and strikes when the facts don't suggest they should or could. And whales are one example of that. The federal government is taking the lead on this. They do this for a living, so-called BOEM, which is an acronym within a broader agency. And these are experts, Heather. We have to trust what they're doing. And so far, there's no cause and effect. By the way, we mentioned a much more grave level. I'm sorry about the losses of whales' life. Let's talk about losses of heroic veterans. That's the Biden administration that wrote that report that you asked us about. We're suing the Federal Highway Transportation Administration under President Biden because we don't think congestion pricing is the right thing for our environment or our commuters in New Jersey. And yet at the same time, they gave us $425 million last week. I say all of that. We have to trust institutions. We have to trust experts. And if we thought there was a cause and effect between these deaths, offshore wind activity and these deaths, we would behave appropriately and responsibly. But the professionals who are looking at this have not established remotely any cause and effect, and we have to trust their judgment.
To me, one of the most interesting things about the debate over whales and wind is that it actually is moving the needle, and that people are changing their mind and being opposed to wind, which is a serious problem.
The Monmouth University poll showed that. I want to make sure everybody out there knows that the fossil fuel interests, bless their hearts, are funding a well-organized campaign to do exactly what you're suggesting.
Guess who doesn't want alternative energy?
So let's all go into this with our eyes open, as they say.
Okay, well, that's a good spot to take a break. You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Or pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
We're live with Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon. And so here's a question for you. A few people reached out to me today about this. There are a few private bus companies that provide commuter service into New York that are closing. You know, we went through it with DeCamp, which really runs mostly, you know, Western Essex, suburban Essex County bus line and when they closed, New Jersey Transit jumped in. Now we have A&C bus lines in Jersey City and Coach USA from Newark closing. A&C has been in the business for a century. So is this on your radar? Are you going to do anything to get NJ Transit to jump in and create this service?
To be determined exactly what we're going to do, but it certainly is on our radar. We've heard from the community in both Jersey City and mostly Jersey City and Newark, although Coach USA is also, to the best of my knowledge, in Union County as well. This is a real issue. But it's on our radar screen. We take it very seriously. We do not want transit deserts. NJ Transit during our time actually has filled out the bus map reasonably nicely. We reacted when DeCamp had their issues, as you know. I can't give you the exact with precision what the fix is here. I think there's a short-term fix, which is probably monetary based. No news to make on that, but we're taking it very seriously, largely through the Economic Development Authority. I think there's a longer-term issue.
I'm sorry, money that would go to the private bus companies to keep them running?
To be determined.
Okay.
But there's a intermediate to longer-term issue as to how this shakes out. I think part of that, it raises, I'm using the word existential again, but it raises another existential question, and that is, in what parts of society are we better off with a public good operator, a utility, if you will, literally a utility, or an NJ Transit, which is an authority of the state, versus where do you feel comfortable with a private sector operator, which may be in A&C's case, as you rightfully point out, has been around a long time. I think Coach USA has been around a long time, not quite as long, but they're also subject to the whims of whether or not they make money or not. And when none of us expected a once-in-a-century pandemic, but of the many fallouts, you've got this, and the question is, what's that look like going forward? And if you're making your decision based on your P&L, not on the service to the residents of the state, that may be a different solution than if it's a public entity that's in those shoes.
P&L is
Profit and loss.
Gotcha.
In this case, more L than P, apparently.
Yeah.
And this is not unique
So that seems to me it suggests, no, we do need the state to step in and provide a service.
I think that's right, although I don't think in all of those existential, I'll use that word again, analyses, you come out that way, but you may come out that way in this case. So stay tuned. We are, most importantly, for the folks out there who are wondering if we're paying attention, if they're wondering if we're as concerned as they are that we're read into this, the answer is emphatically yes. What I don't have tonight is the exact fix either that short-term one or what that thing looks like in the intermediate and long term, but we're on it.
All right, let's talk about your attempts to change the liquor licensing laws and also the bill to lift restrictions on craft beer breweries. You want the legislature to completely revamp how liquor licenses for bars and restaurants are issued because there's a very severe limit on the number of licenses available. They cost a lot. I've been told it can be as much as $1 million for one liquor license. You want to make licenses much more available and hence cheaper, and then give owners of the licenses who invested so much a tax credit to make them whole. Do I have that right? Is
You
that
are broadly-
basically okay?
You are broadly correct.
Now come along the craft beer breweries who are upset because I guess there are all kinds of restrictions on what they're able to do. They can't hold events and they can't serve food. They can't have food trucks. And so there's a bill that the legislature has passed and they want you to sign it.
Sign
and
the bill, Phil, including their own.
Look,
Do you have some here?
Look what I brought you.
Look at this.
So people
should be
can't
on
see
TV.
this. So we
Yes.
have a can of beer. You
I
can look at it.
I'm not going to drink it, but I'm
It's
going to
a-
look at it.
It's a can of beer that
Yeah.
is on its label says "Sign the bill,
Yeah,
Phil," and it's
sign the
an
bill, Phil.
IPA. And if you give it back,
I'm going to give
I
it
know
back to
you like beer,
I
so
do.
we're going to crack this open.
No, God, I can't do that. That's like violating something, isn't it?
There we go. You're not allowed.
I'll have a tiny sip just to be
Because-
social. That's plenty.
Just
Okay.
because, well, we don't really want to go off the rails here. Cheers.
We don't. Cheers.
So, why have they had to produce this beer can that says "Sign the bill, Phil"? Like, why do you not want to sign this bill?
Well, that's a little
It's
bit like,
nice,
does your
right?
mother know you beat your dog? I mean, the premise of your question is not, is it Icarus? I can't remember who
Mhm.
does this. Is it?
It is
Yeah,
Icarus.
it's really good, by the way,
Mm.
guys.
That is a very nice beer.
It is a good beer. Anybody out there, sign the bill, Phil, by Icarus. It's an India Pale Ale, and it's really good. So let me clear up a couple of points of confusion. One is the breweries. I think the wineries, to a certain degree, greater or lesser degree. The distilleries, and all three of those areas are booming, are all operating under ridiculous restrictions. So I want to say unequivocally, I agree with these folks. And we want to lift those restrictions. We also want exactly what you highlighted, broad, comprehensive Main Street liquor license reform, because we've got prohibition era liquor licenses in this state, which do exactly what you suggest. It creates an artificial supply demand imbalance, and it drives, I think in Montclair is the example everybody uses, you're over $1 million. They get a liquor license. It's set for one license for every 3,000
Mhm.
folks. I understand for those folks out there that have a liquor license, they're worried that they may have paid up and that they're going to get now, in the vernacular, screwed with reform. And part of the reform that we've proposed is a cushioning of that economic impact that those folks may get. And we're very sympathetic with that. We understand that. So here's what we've said. First of all, for the breweries, and I think the wineries and the distilleries, but the breweries have had the biggest microphone on this. We're not enforcing any of the restrictions, at least until I think January 1st. So there was one brewery that is in South Jersey, I think in Haddonfield or Haddon Heights, that's going to close because they said they can't operate under these restrictions. I had our guys call them. The restrictions are not in force. So I want to make sure everybody who's out there who's in that business hears that. And I have no intention of enforcing them, but I'm not going away on comprehensive liquor license reform. So after the election, which is coming up in less than 2 months, I want everybody to get at the table with our great legislative colleagues and achieve comprehensive liquor license reform that does all the Main Street stuff that you enunciated on the one hand, and frees up these ridiculous restrictions on the breweries on the other hand.
Okay,
But I'm not going to get piecemealed on this.
Okay, we've gotten a call. I think it's somebody from a brewery. We have Al. I'm afraid, Al, I don't know where you're from. Oh, you're from Clark. So Al, you're on the line with the governor. You've heard his answer, but tell us why you still might, if you do, disagree with what he said.
Hello, Al.
Well, good evening, Governor. Here's my thing, and I'm a fan of Icarus. I'm a consumer of craft beer in the state of New Jersey, and I love the New Jersey craft breweries. I'm a big supporter.
Same.
But here's my question to you. You're talking about the legislature coming back after the election, which gives them 6 weeks in a lame duck session to pass your comprehensive reform that you would like, when the bill currently that is sitting on your desk that has been passed unanimously in both houses provides relief for the breweries. My question to you is, how is a small business is going to invest in the future of their business when you're saying that on January 1, the restrictions that they have that were put in place in 2019 by the Alcohol Beverage Commission are going to be enforced again? A lot of these businesses are sort of holding their breath in the next 3 months that, they don't want to be going to a bank and saying we need a loan to expand and can't get it because we don't know what's going to happen here. This bill provides them relief immediately and doesn't affect anything in terms of the liquor license reform. And I do agree with you, Governor. We need comprehensive liquor license reform, but I don't think this is the way to get it by using the breweries as a poker chip.
Al, I don't agree with that. I agree completely with your concern. So let me just say that, and I have nothing but sympathy for the small businesses, period, but also that includes the breweries. I want to get Alex to get Eric Brophy and to follow up with Al. We'll call you, Al, in the next 24 hours. But listen, the mom and pop restaurant on Main Street that can't get a liquor license is also a small business. And I'm not playing favorites. I want everybody to get what they want here, but there are probably 100 times as many of them as there are breweries in our state. So I care deeply about the breweries. I promise you that. But I care about the folks on Main Street who are, due to artificial reasons, can't get a liquor license. And I'm not going away. I'm an optimist. We're going to figure this out. I appreciate what you said. Listen, there's no question what you said is accurate. But part of the reality here is that you've got a lot of folks, as you rightfully put it, unanimously agreeing for a slice of this. The rest of it is harder. Probably not unanimous. But if we want to unleash Main Street in this state, and I certainly do, and I think I'm joined by, God willing, enough legislators who see it in a similar light, that's what we're going to do. And so bear with us. I understand that this may not be a straight line, but we won't get the broader reform that we need unless we do this in a comprehensive way.
Are you saying that if you were to sign the brewery bill, that you would never get the liquor license changes out of the legislature?
I wouldn't say never, but it's the one element of this whole architecture, which Al has pointed out, is largely universally supported. And so, with all due respect, some of this is hard. Mm-hmm. Away from the breweries, it's hard. And I get it. I mentioned the folks who have their licenses already. I understand that, which is why we've envisioned always this cushioning for their economic interests. There is a reality where other states have done this, Nance, and I should say this for the folks out there who may not either own a brewery or a small restaurant that is can't get a license. By the way, overwhelmingly family-owned, I might add. If you look at other states that have done this, and again, these are prohibition-era restrictions. Mm-hmm. They have unleashed Main Streets. And by doing so, all boats, as the tide has come in, all boats have risen, including the folks who already have the license. And that's exactly what we believe will happen in Jersey.
Okay, we're going to go back to some of the questions we've gotten online. We have Kenny Burns with us. What do you have for us, Kenny?
Kenny, Central Jersey.
You guys were talking about private transit service, so let's focus on the public side. Ankit in Westfield asks, Governor, do you have any plans to ensure NJ Transit has a dedicated funding source for operations?
I don't have any news to break. Is it Ankit?
Yes.
Ankit in Westfield. and maybe Alex, somebody could follow up with Ankit, maybe a Dennis Zeveloff to pick Dennis. No news to make tonight on this. Folks don't accept something which I believe is a dedicated source, which is a long ago agreed transfer annually, I believe without any sunset. If I'm wrong about that, we'll come back to Ankit and correct the record. Of an annual transfer from the Turnpike Authority to NJ Transit. That's been in place. It is in place. It'll continue to be in place. So to some extent that exists. I recognize folks want to find something else. And I recognize also that the federal monies that NJ Transit has been using will run out, and we're going to have to figure out some solution here to fund the gap as they continue to go forward and at almost every checking, every day, every month, improve their operations. So no news to make tonight, but that's something that we've been open-minded to, and we continue to be.
Let's squeeze in another call. We have Eric calling from Cranford.
Hey, Eric.
Hello, and good evening to everyone listening. It's fabulous listening to you guys, and I love it. My question is, we live in Cranford, New Jersey, which I love, and I take pictures here, and it's the best place in the world almost. My concern is for hurricanes. Hurricane Lee is coming closer, and I'm concerned. My question is the river. The river in Cranford is a problem, and it raises, and the water doesn't have anywhere to go. Maybe.
Yep.
Can you give me some information, or give everyone here some info on what is being done, or what's the future like? I guess. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Eric. It's a great question, and I was in Cranford right after Ida, and it wasn't pretty. And depending what part of Cranford you're in, that's not a statement about every part of the town, but in the interest, I think the clock is running against us. There's a lot we're doing: flood mitigation, Blue Acres plans to buy people out of homes, construction standards, a long list of actions that we're taking either on our own or with the feds, in some cases with the Army Corps of Engineers. This is one Sean's not going to speak to me again, given how many times I've asked him, but I think Sean LaTourette should follow up with Eric and just go through the very specific Cranford area. Manville's another community that got crushed in Ida. Let me ask our commissioner, Eric, to go through some more specific steps that we're taking with you.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks, Eric, for your call. Governor Murphy, thanks for joining us tonight. I hope
nothing on the
do
Jets.
We get to drink a little more of this beer? It's delicious.
I'll give you one more.
Many thanks to our social media reporter, Kenneth Burns, producer Doug Doyle, engineers Wayne Schulmeister, George Wellington, and Jason Isaac, and help from Jamara Wakefield, Stephen Smith, Louis Hockman, Joseph Capriglione, and Luke Green. I'm Nancy Solomon. Thanks for listening.